Gabriel Davis's hands, he catches a football much better than you and I could ever do.
Darn tootin'.
But he does it so awkwardly, I think. And the only reason why I know this is because, one, I watch him play football, but two, other content creators like Joe Marino and other amazing people like Eric Turner have mentioned this, is that when the ball comes to him, he doesn't do that window of opportunity if it's like above his like shoulders where you make that diamond, or if it's below your waist, you kind of you put your pinkies together and then kind of like, I guess, cradle the ball into you. He does a little bit of both, and one, like, his left hand is like doing the under thing, and his upper hand is trying to do the window of opportunity, and he just kind of claps things together like kind of like a gator, you know. And
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, he's a professional football player, so obviously it works for him, but fundamentally, the way that I was taught to catch, you don't do that. But, you know, obviously it works for him. And he's got like a 54% catch percentage. But interestingly enough, per playerprofile.com, he's got an 8.7 drop rate, which is number 8 in the league. That's not great. And I don't know if you can attribute that to his awkward catching style or just like bad hands. It just feels like his hands are just super weird, and those drops, as you know, Justin, are super frustrating, especially last year when it felt like the Bills had to fight really, really hard for their wins.
Yeah, and I hear a ton about Gabe Davis of, like, you know, putting it into context of like how many of these routes he runs are going deep down the field, and, you know, they're lower percentage plays to start with. So I can have a little bit of grace on that because, you know, how many of these balls are perfectly on target, you know, defender gets their hands in there, all that. What's most concerning for me with the drops is it's kind of like in those short to intermediate areas where I noticed like his most egregious drops. Like, you notice them when it's a play to like move the chains, but kind of going into the drops, and I guess it's not quite the same. But one of the things that I noticed a lot more last year, and it's kind of going back to 2 years ago, he was Gabriel Davis, he was toe drag swag,
Count Dracula.
Yeah, how many of these balls he was pulling in on the sideline? It was like these,
the ability to suck in those balls.
Yeah, that. Just these amazing grabs that he was having on the sideline, barely getting his toe down, all that. And then last year, we didn't see that from him as much. There was so many times I'm watching a game where I'm like, and Gabe had that last year, like, and just, that was one of the things that was making him really special on the team. And maybe it's the ankle, we'll get into that, but just something I didn't see from him as much last year, to go with the drops that kind of increased.
Yeah, and to kind of build off of that and to go more into the bad stuff, is that you make a good point. The highlight, toe drags, toe taps, all that stuff happened a lot early. His first season, I'm thinking about that end zone against Miami, his first touchdown. That was a monster catch, like really hard to do. And then last year, or his second year, he had a lot of those toe tapping moments. Last year, to your point, he doesn't do it as much. And there's only one thing that I can point to that really changed. Well, two, if you want to be really specific. But one, he bumped up to wide receiver 2. He got the second best cornerback on the opposing team shadowing him. That's pretty hard to do. Or sometimes the number 1 cornerback. You saw the Jets basically double cover Stephon Diggs, and they put Sauce Gardner on Gabriel Davis, and Sauce Gardner is an amazing cornerback already. So do you think your 4th round wide receiver is going to beat out a already budding star at cornerback? I mean, that I'd say probably not, unless you have like a real gem at wide receiver too. And I'm not saying that Gabriel Davis isn't a gem, but let's just call it is what it is. He's not gonna win consistently against an opposing team's number one, and that's not to say that he can't. Again, it's just unlikely because the game planning is really, really hard. The second thing I'll mention here is the fact that again, to your point, he's running different routes. And maybe he would run something different if Brian Daboll was still in town, but he's not here anymore. We have Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey's play calling got a little vanilla midway through the year, and we got a little predictable. Gabriel Davis, what does he do? He bumps up into wide receiver 2. Maybe we become a little too predictable. Maybe Ken Dorsey's putting him in some routes that maybe Gabe can't excel in. There's a lot of this that goes into a player's performance, and I think that's why when you see players go to different teams and new opportunities, a la Stephon Diggs, you see them blow up because other teams, they bet that on themselves that hey, we can get the most out of this player because I don't think that this team is doing it right. I bet you we can.
Yeah, and you kind of got into their what I think I would categorize my biggest negative with Gabe Davis. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault, I guess. So he doesn't have that short to intermediate quick separation. He's not that fully complete receiver. He's not Stephon Diggs. And I put this one kind of more on the Bills organization and kind of like the opposite of what you just said with, another team taking a bet on a guy and then blowing up. I think this was a little bit of an over promotion with Gabe Davis. And I think he's great at the deep field stuff. But as like a true number 2 receiver, I think they not only failed him in kind of over promoting him, but also then not properly replacing that slot player. Because Gabe Davis isn't a guy that's going to thrive on, the quick slants and the quick separation routes. We saw him absolutely thrive with the broken plays, the extended plays, the plays down the field. And then, we lost Beasley and we expected McKenzie to fill in that short to intermediate, and that just didn't work out.
Or Jamison Crowder, but he breaks his ankle, and you got to rely on a rookie.
Right. So I think it's a little bit of an over promotion, but also kind of, I think Jamison Crowder's the big one there. They were planning on him being the Beasley replacement, and we never really got to see him.
And then you rely on Khalil Shakir. There's a lot that goes into it, yeah.
And then you're asking Gabe Davis to do more than your original game plan was.